All right, we're going to barrel right along with section 116 and what I'd like to call a new beginning. We have to sort of start over again here. We're going to start with a pay order. Super exciting, even has math on it. The signature is torn away, as is custom, which means it's been done. But there you go. Exciting stuff. Then we get into a trial against a man by the name of Aaron Lyon on the 20th of April, 1838, which is just fantastic. So settle in for a little story here. I'm going to let the Joseph Smith papers do the talking. This is the historical introduction. Lyon was the presiding high priest in the church branch at the settlement of Goyman's Mill, about 8 miles east of Far West. One of the members living there was Sarah Jackson. She had moved from Illinois to Missouri in 1837 to settle with the Latter-day Saints, with the expectation that her husband would soon join her. When her husband did not arrive within a few months, she asked Lyon, quote, to inquire of the Lord concerning my husband, and what was the cause of his not coming, unquote. Sometime later, the recently widowed Lyon told her that he had received a revelation that her husband had died. In another occasion, Lyon told Jackson of a vision in which he saw her as his wife. Jackson initially expressed doubt about the validity of Lyon's vision, but the influential, much older man coerced her to agree to marry him. However, in November of 1837, before the wedding occurred, Jackson's husband arrived. Lyon attempted to excuse his actions by blaming the devil for giving him false revelations. Nevertheless, Jackson's husband brought charges against Lyon in an elders' meeting. The verdict of the elders' council, which is not known, was appealed to the High Council, and thus it is in the Joseph Smith papers because Joseph got involved in this. And I'm sorry, I shouldn't. I mean, this is 200 years ago, so hopefully we're over it by now. But this guy is widowed. His wife passes away. This woman comes to him and says, hey, I'm a young woman and my husband is not around. Could you please receive a revelation for me? And the guy's like, yeah, your husband's dead, and I have a vision that you're supposed to marry me. And right before they get married, the husband shows up, and yeah, scandal. Anyway, I just get a kick out of it. It's people are people, no matter what age, no matter what time you live in. Anyway, so Joseph and Sidney Rigdon had to sit in on this meeting because there was not enough people. So we get this. After hearing testimony from Latter-day Saints in the branch at Goyman's Mill, Rigdon argued for justice, and Joseph Smith argued for mercy. The council determined to retain Lyon as a member of the church but revoke his office in the priesthood. So more or less like, you don't get to be a leader anymore. Because technically speaking, they were never married or anything like that. He was just kind of like doing things. But at the same time, I would have understood him being fully excommunicated. So, it's in the past. That's what it was. But I got a big kick out of that one. That's just scandal. We then get a prospectus for the Elders Journal, basically a call to subscribe, and what the paper's all about. We get an editorial decrying the church's injuries and her enemies. That's an editorial in that same periodical. And then we get a discourse on the 6th of May, 1838, where Joseph, quote, delivered a discourse to the people showing or setting forth the evils that existed and would exist by reason of hasty judgment or dissensions upon any subject given by any people, or in judging before they hear both sides of the question, unquote. So he also speaks about people whining about money they lost, and also about the planets and the book of Abraham. So quite a wide variety of things to talk about. But basically just says like, hey, we got to be better than this. We need to hear both sides of no matter what. Just you got to hear both sides, and then you can make a judgment and make it final. And that's also, obviously coming from Oliver Cowdery being excommunicated, David Whitmer, people being disfellowshipped, people, Aaron Lyon, all this stuff. You got to hear both sides. We get a court declaration against Joseph Smith for $1,000 that he owed for some debts. This was for some mercantile goods, and it was past due. Joseph laid that on to Oliver Granger to see it settled as soon as it was possible to do so. So that was Oliver Granger's sort of role as everybody was kind of leaving Ohio and coming to Missouri, into far west Missouri. We get the Elders Journal, a little bit of a Q&A, which lays out some Latter-day Saint beliefs about the Bible. Do you believe in the Bible? What is the Book of Mormon? Question and answer. Do you believe in modern revelation? Is the canon closed? And even hinting at souls being taught the gospel in the afterlife. where Joseph sort of says like, hey, yeah, if you don't hear it today, you might hear it after you've passed on to the other side, which is kind of interesting. And now we come to the time in which we say that Section 116 happens. Although I had to hack this together because there is no entries in the documents or anywhere else for a Section 116 of the Doctrine and Covenants, but it still exists there. So as a paper's introduction to this that I am putting together myself, there is no documents entry for 116. It is not found in Revelations and translations because it was never published in Joseph Smith's lifetime as an official canon. But we do get 2 copies that have the same wording. So we get Joseph Smith's scripture book, or the journal, if you want to call it that. And we also get it in the manuscript history of the church. Now, the circumstances around this, Joseph Smith and his companions are going up what's called Grand River, and they're scouting out locations for the saints to settle in. They came to a place that they decided to call Spring Hill. They also went somewhere else, and Joseph Smith decided to call it Tower Hill. He says, I'm going to name this place Tower Hill. Why? Because he says that they found an old Nephite altar or tower there. So they were kind of naming places for themselves as they went along. Anyway, they eventually strike land on this place that they term Spring Hill. And the wording for the portion that we extract this revelation from is this. This is from his journal. In the after part of the day, President Smith and Rigdon and myself went to White's Ferry, about half-mile from this place up the river, for the purpose of selecting and laying claims to city plot near said ferry in Davies County Township. And then it says 60, range 27 and 28, sections 25, 36, 31, 30. These are just the land, how they surveyed it out. Anyway, it was called Spring Hill, a name appropriated by the brethren present, but afterwards named by the mouth of the Lord, and was called Adam-ondi-Ahman, because, said he, it is the place where Adam dwelt, where Adam shall come to visit his people, where the Ancient of Days shall sit as spoken of by Daniel the prophet. So basically they said, we're going to call it Spring Hill, and Joseph's like, actually, God has already named this place Adam-ondi-Ahman, and it's the place where Adam lived and where he will come again, as Daniel the prophet prophesied. So it's like, okay. So they called it Adam-ondi-Ahman. And that's the best I could do. That's the extraction from the journal where you get Section 116. But not only that, but I also found this handy-dandy map here, which kind of diagrams out what the heck we're talking about in the river and where we're going up and down and all that kind of stuff. That's all here in this little map, which I found very helpful. So you can see where they kind of go up the river and so forth. All right. We then get a letter from Orson Hyde and Heber Kimball in England. They are having tremendous success with the people joining the church there. This is a very famous mission where many modern-day families can trace their lines back to the British mission of Heber C. Kimball and Orson Hyde. We get a letter from Don Carlos explaining how difficult it was to move his family, or the Smith family, and their setbacks along the way to move to Missouri from Kirtland, Ohio. So they had to uproot yet again. We get a set of licenses, a lot of licenses here, and then we get a meeting on the 28th of June to discuss and organize a stake at Adam-ondi-Ahman. And then after that, we get a series of revelations, one unpublished, and the rest of them are published, which all happen on the same day, on the 8th of July, 1838. And so because of that, we're going to skip down to the next part of this. So stay with us for part 3.